Welcome back to another exciting episode of Decoding Cybersecurity. In part two, we continue our discussion with Dr. Jeff, diving into deepfakes and artificial intelligence. Let's talk about your video on the importance of recognizing a deepfake. I loved how you used a deepfake to demonstrate the concept. It was so effective. For our listeners, could you explain what deepfakes are and why they pose such a significant threat?
Absolutely, yeah. This to me is one of the things that I think is critically important that we educate the general public about, because it is a real threat today. A deepfake is an AI generated imitation or impersonation of a person. So it could be of a real person or it could be of a non-existent person, but the ones of a real person that we recognize, those are the ones that would be most damaging. So someone could generate, it said, a deep fake of your voice with taking only a 3-second audio sampling of you saying something. And so I've heard some people say, well, I don't want a deep fake generated of me, so that's why I don't do online interviews. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You can get 3 seconds of audio on anyone. You're focusing on the wrong end of this. As we like to say, you're locking the barn door after all the animals have escaped. It's too late. Already, if I went 3 seconds of audio on anybody, I turn the record function on my phone, put it in my pocket, and walk up and say, how was your weekend? And before they finish the first sentence, I've got 3 seconds of audio. Then I feed that into an AI model, and then I can type out the words that I want the deepfake to say in your voice. So it will sound like you said something you never said. Now, sometimes that could be a lot of fun for entertainment purposes, or it could be really damaging in a scam case. If a relative calls you on the phone and says, I've been hurt, I've been injured, I've been robbed, I've been put in jail, please send money, you'll help them. But what if it's not them? What if it's a deepfake of their voice? What if the deepfake is of, let's say, a head of state of a country, and the deepfake is a video of that person appearing to declare war on another country?
Yes.
Now that would cause widespread panic. And it may take us a few hours, days, weeks to sort out whether that was real or not. In the meantime,
By the time damage is already done.
absolutely, the panic has already occurred. The stock market, by the way, will have already been manipulated. If you buy shorts on the right stocks, that is an investment that a stock will go down, you could deepfake the CEO of that company's voice or video and have them saying, our company is about to go bankrupt. Well, their stock is going to go down. If you bought the short at the right time, you're going to be rich. So this is a kind of manipulation that could affect all of us, literally in our daily lives. And we need to all understand that if you're not in the room with the person, you might be viewing a deepfake. Now, as you joked at the beginning of this, I might be a deepfake right now. You don't know if I'm really me. But
True.
what's the harm in this case? As long as you're getting what you want in terms of information out of this discussion, well, if it was a deepfake or not doesn't really matter. But if you're
Maybe I could be a deepfake version of Rakesh. You never know.
I don't know. This is our first time meeting, so I wouldn't even know what to compare.
True. Yes.
So, but on the other hand, if I'm going to exchange sensitive information with you of any sort, well, then I want to use some other methods. I want to use maybe some multiple, split the message up. If there's sensitive information, split it up into multiple pieces and send parts of the message across different platforms, across different communication channels, so that I know that this is verified. And
Right.
but that's a big one, and it's a big threat.
Yes.
And
Yes.
deepfakes are only going to get better. They won't get worse.
True.
And right now, they're absolutely and utterly convincing with the current state of the art.
Yeah. So I find this whole concept of deepfakes fascinating and a bit unnerving. Have you come across any real world cases where deepfakes were used maliciously? I imagine the implications could be pretty serious, right?
Yeah, we had here in the U.S., we just had a presidential election. I'm sure you probably heard.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So we had a primary election before that where we select the candidate for one party and the candidate for the other party. The primary in New Hampshire There was a deepfake robocall of President Joe Biden's voice that went out calling people, telling them, you don't need to vote in this primary. Just wait until the general election. And that already happened. Okay, so now it turns out it didn't make any difference because at that time, Joe Biden was really the only serious candidate on the Democratic side. So whether people voted in the primary or not, he was going to get the nomination at that point in time. Now, other events changed, but that showed what was possible. There's already been 2 cases, one in the UK and one in Hong Kong, where deepfake, in the first case in the UK, by an executive's voice, convinced an employee to wire $35 million to an attacker. And in Hong Kong, they did a deepfake video call where they imitated the CFO, the chief financial officer of a company, and got $25 million out of them. So yeah, this already happened. This is not a theoretical threat anymore. Already happened.
It's interesting how AI is like both the villain and the hero when it comes to deepfakes. Used to create them and also detect them. How do you see this dynamic evolving in the future?
Yeah, so technologists like you and me, we instantly think if technology creates a problem, technology can solve the problem. Because generally that's been the case. So we instantly, our minds go to, well, if you can create a deepfake, I can write a technology that will detect a deepfake. I'm going to tell you, in my personal opinion, forget about that idea. Because already some of the tools that are being sold to do deepfake detection, there's at least one of them that's no better than flipping a coin in terms of its accuracy. It's 50-50. So don't need to buy these tools. The deepfakes will continue to get better to the point where they're indistinguishable from an authentic video. So being able to do detection, I think, is going to be a waste of time. It's a very short time before we won't be able to detect any of these. Right now, sometimes you see bad deepfakes and you can tell, but those are quickly going away. So I don't think technology is going to be the answer for us on this, at least not in terms of detection. Another suggestion has been, and I cover these in the video, so if people want to go take a look at that deepfake video, they can do. But another approach has been to create some sort of verification scheme where I can, if someone produces a deepfake, they would have to watermark that or digitally sign it and indicate that it's a deepfake. Well, guess who will never do that? The bad guys. So
True.
Only the good guys would be doing that, and the bad guys won't. So that won't help either. You know, if you make a rule that only the good guys follow, not very helpful. We need rules that stop the bad guy. Or if you go the other way and say, okay, any authentic video has to be digitally signed in some way. Okay, now imagine, first of all, we have no worldwide international standard for that today. It doesn't exist, so you'd have to create that. That will take years. Even if it did, imagine every form of video that's ever taken. The video you and I are shooting right now. The video of someone who pulls out their phone and takes a picture. Every single one of those is now going to have to follow this standard and be digitally signed. Not going to happen. So it might work in some specific use cases. For instance, if we were to say the President of the United States, whenever he or she does a video, then that will come from an authentic source and we'll digitally sign that. So we'll know which of those videos we can trust. But the others that people just shoot on their phones, they see the president walk down the street and kick a dog. Well, did that really happen or not? Could have been a deep fake. So we're living now in an era of uncertainty because of this.
True. And now let's move on to your particular career. You work with clients in more than 50 countries across 6 continents and led global teams. That's such an incredible accomplishment. Can you share some of the key lessons you've learned from working with such a diverse range of clients and industries?
Yes. That's been one of the great privileges of my career, I think, is to get to see as much of the world as I can and get to interface with people. And I find that while I'm fascinated by the differences in cultures, in language, in ways of thinking, that at the end of the day, I find we're far more alike than we are different. But to say that we're all exactly the same is also not true either, because there are certain mindsets that certain cultures adapt and follow, and it's helpful to understand that if I'm going to a particular country, it's helpful if I can sort of put myself in their mindset so that when I go to speak to them, I speak to them from a perspective that feels familiar. And that's hard for anyone to do because we're all a product of our own environment. You know, I'm very American in my ways of thinking, my direct manner of speech, and so forth. But I have to realize when I'm in another country, I'm a guest, and I need to try to, as best possible, to adapt, but still remain authentic. You know, I don't want to try to pretend like I'm an Italian when I'm in Rome. Nobody's going to believe that, right? I put on a fake
Yes.
accent. Nobody's going to believe that. So I still need to be authentic, but it is fascinating to me. Like I said, I've always enjoyed wondering, learning how things work. The way people work is really fascinating too. And the way human
Yeah.
brains work is very fascinating. And the way cultures work is very fascinating. So,
Very well said.
and I find that travel, if you immerse yourself in it, you will find that prejudice starts to disappear. It starts melting away because prejudice is essentially based on ignorance. It's a shortcut that we take, a heuristic to say, I don't want to have to think about and process who you are. I'm just going to look at you and decide what I think you actually are. Well, no, that's lazy. If you like an intellectual challenge, go figure out what that person's really like. So travel's been able to do that for me, and I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity.
So, looking back at the start of your incredible career, is there one piece of advice you wish you could give your younger self when you were just starting out?
Oh gosh, one bit of advice because I had some, a few things. The first one is a simple one, and that is find what you really are. Find your identity, and don't let other people take that from you. Be true to yourself. Be authentic. I had many times in my career where people advised me to do things, and they were well-meaning with their advice, and I'm really glad I didn't take it. I had a lot of people advise me, Jeff, you know cybersecurity, but wouldn't it be great if you knew all these other things too? You should try to become a data scientist as an example, or you should try to become a web application engineer or something like. And I'm like, no. This is what I'm really passionate about. So I made the right decision to stay with it. That's not the decision for everyone. That was the decision for me. So everyone should not try to follow my advice for me. But I knew who I was, and I knew to be true to myself, to really enjoy what I'm doing, I have to be true to myself, and this is what I'm passionate about. Now, on the other hand, and this is advice I give to anyone I'm mentoring, I learned this a long time ago. I read this somewhere, and it has really stuck with me. And that is about burnout. Everyone experiences burnout, I think, at some point in their career. I had at least 2 really significant burnout moments in my career where I was just like, I am done with this, really done. And what I learned about burnout, because what people normally say, if you feel burned out, what do they say? They say, well, you're working too hard. You need to take some time off. Take a week, take 2 weeks. Okay, take a week, take 2 weeks. What happens? After a couple of days, you're feeling good.
Same old story.
After 5-6 days, you've forgotten all your passwords. You're having a really good break. All right. Then you come back to work, and in 2 hours, you're burned out again. And it's because it wasn't fatigue that causes burnout. What causes burnout is this: a loss of a sense of purpose. When what you're doing no longer matters to you, when it no longer has meaning for you, when you think it doesn't matter, that's when you are in danger of burnout. So the fix for burnout is to find meaning in what you're doing. Now, sometimes what you're doing is a meaningless task. So good luck on finding meaning in that. But to the extent that you can find meaning and purpose in what you're doing, that's what will be your inoculation against burnout. And that's something I wish I knew back in those days before I went through those 2 burnout cases that I've learned since then. So that would be my big piece of advice.
Brilliantly said. Burnout is definitely one of the things they just wanted to go out, but as you rightly said, once they're back, it's the same old story.
That's right. So for
So,
me, like,
yeah.
getting to teach, being able to interact with students at the university, that gives me meaning. I watch the light bulbs go off over their heads. I see their
Right.
enthusiasm. I see their gratitude in the gift that they're receiving of knowledge, and that gives me meaning and purpose. Being able to do the YouTube videos and see that the view counts go up, and thinking that's that many more people that hopefully I was able to touch in a positive way. that gives me a sense of meaning. These are the kinds of things that make the work worthwhile.
Yeah. So, as you have heard, ransomware and supply chain vulnerabilities are top of mind for so many companies right now. What advice would you give to organizations trying to navigate these challenges?
Yeah, ransomware is a big problem. I break ransomware down into two predominant types. There's one type where the ransomware attacker says, I've got your data and I'm not going to give it back. And the other is, I've got your data and I'm about to give it to everyone else. Two different forms of extortion in that case. So what's the best guard against the first? I've got your data and I'm not going to give it back. Well, if I have a backup copy of my data and you say you've got my data and won't give it back, I tell you to go pound salt. I don't care. I've got my data too, and you can get lost. Now, you need to make sure that the copy of your data, your backup, is an immutable copy, meaning it can't be changed. Once it's been written out, it can't be overwritten. Otherwise, your backup may also be ransomed out and encrypted. Okay? Or if you say, yeah, but we don't worry about that, we've got air-gapped copies. Well, if it truly is air-gapped, then that means that it probably wasn't updated frequently. So you're going to have a gap in time when you don't have updated. So immutable backup is the best defense against the first ransomware case. The second one, I've got your data and I'm about to give it to everyone else. Make sure your data is encrypted and access controlled. Strong authentication controls on that. That way, if it is in fact encrypted and they made a copy of it, well then, if you've encrypted it well, they can give it to whoever they want. It won't matter because they can't read it. So those are your best defenses against those things. It's not 100%, but it's a whole lot better than having to pay a ransom. In which case, if you pay a ransom, you may or may not get your data back. You know, that's still a big gamble. And in some countries, it's illegal to pay a ransom. So you have to be careful with that as well.
But I'm still surprised, or I keep hearing that some company paid some billions of dollars as a ransom to the hackers. I do not know. How would they believe these hackers?
How can you? So in other words, can you trust a thief? Right?
Yeah,
Someone who
that's
just
the thing.
just stole from you. Now you're about to
Yeah.
give them money. Okay, that ethically should cause a lot of alarm bells to go off in your head to begin with. Now, in general, ransomware people do give you, if you pay them, they will give you the key to decrypt your data. Because if they didn't do it very much, let's say if, half the time they didn't, people would just stop paying. So it's bad business for them. If they want to keep doing these kinds of attacks, which they do, generally they do want to give you the key. The problem is, and there was a very highly publicized case here in the U.S. a few years ago, Colonial Pipeline. This is an oil pipeline that's distribution of oil, petroleum, that sort of thing through the southeastern part of the U.S. It hit the state where I'm in here, and there were gas stations that were closed. You could not get gas for a few days. The governor of the state of North Carolina declared a state of emergency. All of this over ransomware. Well, they paid, I think it was $5 million because this was a national security issue. If no one can get gas, then all of a sudden everything starts breaking down. I mean, imagine, we can't even run ambulances. People's lives are in danger, right? So they paid the ransom. The tool that they got from the ransomware gang was so inefficient that it was going to take too long to recover their data. And they finally just had to bail out on that and just rely on the backups that they had anyway. So they got delivered to them something that was useless, essentially. Mm-hmm. So they paid $5 million and got nothing for it. There's that. Thankfully things got back up and operational, but there was a lot of learning that happened there. So the best, and by the way, we've learned, IBM does an annual cost of a data breach survey where we have an outside consultant interview 3,000 people to go through the 3,000 people who've had data breaches in their organizations and get information about it. And one of the findings we had from that is that for the first time that I've noticed, organizations that involved law enforcement were less likely to have to pay a ransom than in the past. And in the past, bringing in law enforcement was like the kiss of death. That meant they were going to come in and confiscate all your systems and shut you down faster than the bad guys could. And they were going to slow things down. But I think what's happening is law enforcement is getting better at working with companies and can actually be a real ally. Now that, of course, I'm making a general statement, and depends on your jurisdiction as to whether law enforcement is up to speed or not, but it's a hopeful sign.
Jeff, let's wrap up with a quick rapid fire round. Biggest cybersecurity myth you have heard. If you could invent a security tool, what problem would it solve? Or a book besides your own that every cybersecurity professional should read?
Oh,
The coolest country you have worked in during your career? I just want to put you on the spot.
oh,
The proudest moment of your career?
oh boy.
I know it's a long list.
So I'll give you an unexpected answer.
Oh, that was like 40 years ago, maybe? How do you define success in cybersecurity? If you weren't in cybersecurity, what career would you have pursued? Rumor has it that you are not just a cybersecurity expert, but also a bit of a guitar doctor. So here's a question. If cybersecurity were like fixing a guitar string, what's the one tool or skill you would always keep in your toolkit? You have spent so much time at RDU Airport that I hear they might name a terminal after you. If you had to give the airport a cybersecurity name, what would it be?
What would I call it? I was sitting at home at night one time, and my phone popped up an alert, and it said 20 minutes to home. And I thought, well, I am at home. Where does it think my home is? My phone has learned where so I clicked and I said, okay, I'll play along. Where's home?
I know. Oh. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate my hosting skills? Remember, this is being recorded.
Yes.
No pressure.
I'll be.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeff.
Absolutely. It's my privilege.
One more. So if I were a cybersecurity vulnerability, what kind of patch do you think I'd need?
Oh, gosh. You seem like a very cheerful guy.